So I want to dedicate this talk today to my dad, who's in the audience, right here somewhere. My dad is a lifelong fan of the New York Mets, and as such, he instilled in me a deep empathy and respect for the underdog. And I hope that that empathy and respect is reflected in the talk today. There's a growing body of scholarship that highlights the cultural downside of our obsession with innovation. I first got wind of it while driving home from school, from here. And I was listening to the radio interview, and these two scholars came on. Andrew Russell and Lee Vinsel are sort of the leading lights of critical innovation studies. I didn't even know there was such a thing. But it was one of those interviews where you're in your car and you're thinking like, yes, someone is saying exactly what I've been wanting to say for so long. I was so like screaming to myself and looking probably fairly crazy. In any case, I'm going to develop some of their ideas today. They're the ones that inspired this talk. And I'm going to personalize them, tell some stories, ultimately with the emphasis on highlighting what I'm going to call the 4 hidden costs of innovation. One of their main points was that in an age when we celebrate innovation, we tend to devalue maintenance. We lionize someone like Elon Musk for his innovative automobile ideas, and we underappreciate the mechanic who actually fixes the cars we can afford. We balk when we have to go get an oil change and do preventative maintenance on the car because we'd much rather go buy a new gadget. Like, let's spend the money on something fun and exciting. Maintenance isn't really sexy, and innovation is. Maintenance is kind of a drag, and innovation is like the bright future. We can also call this the shiny object problem. And that is the new, the now, and the wow seduce us, and at the same time they distract us from maintaining the infrastructures that support and facilitate our lives. Which leads me to the first point. The first hidden cost of innovation is that our obsession with innovation is not only coincidental with our neglect of maintenance, it actually enables our neglect of maintenance. And I want to drive this point home by telling 2 stories. The first is a singular tragedy, and the second is an ongoing crisis. On August 1st, 2007, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a bridge spanning the Mississippi River collapsed and killed 13 people. I myself was here in Providence when it happened, but I just recently moved from Minnesota because I went to the University of Minnesota and walked by that bridge every single day. I remember that day so well because I was calling my loved ones, making sure everyone was okay, and just like frantically trying to like figure out what happened, how this bridge could have collapsed. It had been deemed structurally deficient for years. There were internal memos that said this bridge should be closed or replaced, but the Department of Transportation ultimately determined that it was a design flaw. Nonetheless, this tragedy set off a wave of maintenance projects across the nation. You may have noticed in the last 10 years an increase in gasoline tax. Those tax dollars are going towards these maintenance projects, and as far as I'm concerned, that's what taxes are for, to make our lives better, to make our roads safer, right? However, after 10 years after the Minneapolis bridge collapsed, 54,259 bridges are in need of repair and replacement in this country. In Little Rhodey, our state, right here, 23.2% of the bridges are structurally deficient. Ray LaHood, the former transportation secretary, has even been quoted as saying that America's infrastructure is like a third world country. So these stats and statements force the question: how can the world's wealthiest nation, the one that prattles on about its greatness, have such a poor infrastructure? Why have we neglected to maintain our roads, our bridges, and our transit system? I think the next story will hopefully lead us closer to an answer. This one's about the T, Boston's public transit system. The winter of 2015 was a brutal winter, in fact, the snowiest winter on record in Boston. I remember hearing then about massive delays in the transit system, the T, breakdowns, people not being able to get to work, their livelihoods jeopardized, and even their lives were jeopardized. I myself live in Providence. My partner Jim, he's out here too, lives in Boston. Hi, Jim. So I go to Boston and use the T, take the commuter rail from Providence to Boston, but my life and my livelihood was not at stake in these breakdowns. Nonetheless, I remember I wanted to go to the Institute of Contemporary Arts in Boston, which is in the Seaport District, the bustling new Seaport District, called, you guessed it, the Innovation District. Now, I arrived at the Amtrak station, the train station in Providence, bought my ticket for the T, waited for my first train, canceled. Okay, I'll wait another hour, no problem, like it's not that big of a delay. Canceled also, second train canceled. Third train rolls around, I'm like, come on, we can do it nope, canceled. It's like, okay, I'll suck it up, I'll pay through the nose, buy the Amtrak ticket just to get to Boston to go to this museum. Now, this was supposed to be like a cheap day, jaunt to Boston, quick round trip just to go see some stuff at a museum. And it turned into a really expensive day. And I thought of all the Bostonians who had to do this in the past year, right? The many Bostonians who had to because the public transit system wasn't working, they had to go for these private transit systems, which cost like 3 to 4 times more. Moreover, when I arrived at the new Innovation District, the sort of enmeshment of how much we're celebrating innovation and devaluing maintenance, it became so clear. How much we're investing in private, innovative corporations and simply neglecting our infrastructures. It was just like, all right there. What I saw were these high-rise condos going up. Beautiful, luxury high-rise condos scraping into the sky on that side. On this side, there were these new headquarters for these innovative corporations that Boston bent over backwards to court. And I thought, what about the lowly T? That lowly little T just sort of chugging along there like the little engine that could. It seemed as if those high-rises were mocking that little T, saying, I'm innovative, you're a loser. And the poor T just saying, please fix me, I'm the one that makes this city move. I later learned that the relationship between these two things was intricately woven. In fact, all that money that was used to court those innovative corporations with tax incentives, all the money from those tax incentives was diverted from those maintenance projects. So this, in fact, begets this. That's what I meant by it enables. Our obsession with innovation enables our neglect of maintenance. Boston's not unique in this. You've heard about New York City's transit systems, public problems with their subway system, and I was just recently reading that the ones most affected by that city's problems are the home healthcare workers, the ones who take care of the sick and elderly in their homes. So that's going to become an increasing healthcare crisis, in New York especially. To sum it up, the urban planning strategies of the last 10 years for major American cities seems to be, don't maintain, innovate. And what that innovation is doing is diverting all the money from the maintenance projects. The Onion recently, brilliantly, parodied this phenomenon. Confident Philadelphia officials preemptively razed Center City to make room for Amazon headquarters. It's funny because it's this close to being true. We're willing to destroy our cities to save them with innovation. The truth of the matter is, the majority of the people who live in these cities, the native Bostonians, the native New Yorkers, the ones who make that city run, give it its lifeblood, give it its character, would benefit so much more from maintenance than any sort of future promise of innovation. This leads me to my next hidden cost of innovation, which is that where innovative labor thrives, so does social inequality. Now, it's not only that Bostonians are having a harder and harder time getting from point A to point B, they're having a hell of a time paying rent. Because when innovation comes to town, life gets expensive. And regarding the business of innovation, the profits seem to have trickled up into the very hands of the social groups that have historically held wealth and power in this nation. Our visionary innovators are white and male. Our unsung maintainers, women and people of color. One need only do a Google search to see just social inequality in Silicon Valley being our innovation Shangri-La, to see how bad it is. I mean, this is just I understand the irony of doing a Google search to critique Google, but, so be it. When one does a Google search of social inequality and Silicon Valley, this is what comes up. Silicon Valley's wealthy elite have made social inequality worse. Opposition to gender equality is rising in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley's race gap is getting worse, not better. And finally, San Francisco has become one huge metaphor for economic inequality in America. Now, my sister, who's also here, used to live in San Francisco, and I was lucky enough to get to go visit her in the Mission District, which was at that time a multicultural hub, a place of interracial mingling, interclass contact. Now it's essentially just a playground for the nouveau tech riche. And that tech riche is making bank. San Francisco has one of the highest per capita incomes in the nation. And yet when we break that down in terms of race, we'll see that all that tech wealth is skewing white. Hispanic and Latino families have less than half the per capita income of white families. The innovators like to think that they're disruptors, that they're really the game changers. They're going to really shake things up and transform things. My questions: if innovation is disruption, why hasn't our social hierarchy been shaken up? If innovation is disruption, why is there still an enormous wage gap between men and women, and whites and people of color? Why hasn't wealth been distributed more equitably? Okay, so I've been critical of innovation. It's my job. I'm a critical studies person. But now I'm going to give it a fair shake. Let's give the word a fair shake. I'm going to need your help for this one. So, innovation. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word innovation? First association. Go. Okay, wait. I know I heard religious heresy, right? Was that one? No? I did definitely hear political revolution. I think I heard that, something along those lines. But I know for a fact that I heard someone yell out botany. That it had something to do, that when I hear innovation, I hear botany. In fact, these are the three first definitions of the word, historically speaking. The three first derivations of the word innovation are religious heresy, political revolution, and botany. But I would wager my dog on that you all and me, because we're all swimming in the same water here, had something to do with product development, tech development, the bright future of progress, right? We shouldn't be surprised by this association. Since the 1950s, business leaders, politicians, economists have been telling us that innovation equals tech development, equals product development, and that's going to equal the good life. That's going to equal not just more jobs, it's going to equal a better society. And I got to thinking about this association, this deep association almost, that innovation is so intricately tied to product development, to tech development. And I thought, this fuels a pretty dangerous narrative. And that narrative goes something like this. Although innovation in the past has had so many meanings, most of them negative, by the way, now it's simply just doublespeak for more capitalism at any cost. We just seem to invest in the same systems and practices and think we're going to get different results. As the earth warms, as the seas rise, and as our landfills swell, we continue to believe that global innovative capitalism will save us. What I'm going to be thinking about for the rest of this talk is how to disengage ourselves from these present practices and systems so that we can think of truly innovative solutions. And by that, I mean radical solutions. But first, I have to tell you about the new buzzwords I came up with to counter innovation. So I was talking to my friend Mark in Ottawa, and he was like, yes, I understand what you're saying, that innovation is about this relentless push forward, that's always about like more, 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 and you want to say less, less, less. And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And he's like, slowvation. That's the new buzzword. It's going viral. You're the first to hear it. I thought, that's cool, that's pretty cool. But then I was like, I want something a little more radical, not just slowing things down, but just like, let's get off the hamster wheel altogether. Let's like cut the cord, get off the grid, throw our cell phones in the water. So how about novation? Nothing, like done. No one's going to be on board with that one. I thought, okay, I'm a philosopher. I teach philosophy. We reflect, we think, we try to honestly assess a problem. How about reflectivation? And then I realized I sounded more like a marketer trying to invent a product name for some 1950s household appliance or some bizarre product and I thought, forget it, no more buzzwords. But the idea of disengaging from these present systems and practices is still very much what I want to drive home today. As a teacher, in the age of innovation, in the innovation frenzy, we've been encouraged, and as students you know, to use all kinds of technological doodads in the classroom. Flip the classroom, use your phone to do instant polling. What else? Yeah, various forms of like teaching you how to thrive within these systems, teaching you digital natives how to flourish within our present day environment. My teaching philosophy, it's pretty old school. I go, well, it's more than old school, it's ancient. It's like from before Christ. It comes from Cicero. Cicero is quoted as saying, the purpose of education is to free the student from the tyranny of the present. And I just love that phrase because the present can be tyrannical. We don't even realize that we're swimming in it, in these discourses and these ideologies. And I think the point of education is to sort of disengage us from it, get us out of it so that we can think better. We can think about actually innovative solutions. My hidden cost of innovation 4 then is specifically about teaching. That innovative, so-called innovative pedagogy embeds students firmly in the present. Now, there's good news, the silver lining. The people have spoken. And the people don't want innovative pedagogy. What do the people want? Work with me here. What publicly available educational forum has attracted millions and millions of viewers in the last 10 years? I'll say a publicly available TEDx. You got it. Right? So TEDx has attracted millions and millions of participants, willful participants. They didn't pay to do it. They just had internet access and they watched a lecturer. And think of the setup of the TED Talk. It is as old-fashioned as the day is young. It is a lecturer and listeners. It is like I could be Cicero right now, and you guys could be like, in togas. I mean, it is so ancient what we're doing here. And I'm trying to emphasize the fact that TED Talks are not at all innovative. TED Talks are on the side of the maintainers. And that's obviously a compliment coming from me. I'm saying TED Talks are not innovative. They're like maintaining who we are as a species. They're maintaining our oral tradition that's grounded in speakers and listeners, students and teachers. They're also maintaining what I like to call the 5 pillars of democracy. Those pillars: civil discourse, rational argument, clear articulation, active listening, interdependency. Those 5 pillars might be our most innovative things that we can do here. And the fact that we're in a forum that's emphasizing these, that's allowing us to work through some of these, we're also now working toward and trying to maybe fulfill the dream of democracy. So give yourself a round of applause for participating in these 5 pillars of democracy. Thank you for your time. I appreciate everything, and I hope you have a great day.